Hey everyone, Alex here. Just want to show everybody how to change a plunge shaft in one of these Triton 3 1/4 horse routers. It's really not that difficult, so I'm just going to go through this real quick. There's usually a spring in here when you mount it to a router table. This one does not have one, so what I'm going to do is just take the cap off, and by just taking that little screw out, I would normally put my hand over the top and twist because that spring will pop it up. Now, something that you're going to want to do is take this little clip off. Now, when you raise up just one corner of that clip, if you'll put your finger just on the side, give that a little tap, you can see that ring comes right off there. The other thing that we want to make sure that we do, there's a little part in here that you're gonna miss if you don't know it's there. And I'm just gonna pull this out. You can see the base comes off, and when I stand this up, we get our little copper washer, or basically it's a little button. What that is, we'll just take this out so you can see that that handle comes off. And that piece just drops right back in there after you put your base back in. That way copper is pushing against the steel, not steel to steel, marring it up. So we'll set our base off to the side. Next, we're going to want to take our brushes out because we're going to pull the armature. So we'll pop that brush out. Do the same thing on the other side. Now, next we're going to want to pull this E-clip off. This is just a simple little clip. If you just take your screwdriver, kind of push down in there. Again, keep your finger over that edge, otherwise that thing will go flying. We'll set that off to the side, and we've also got a washer there. Now, the last thing we want to do to take this apart is take those 4 screws out of the base. And then most of the time, if it's not too broken, you should be able to just kind of twist on that and you can see it separate. It does have 2 marks there that you can put a screwdriver in if it will not separate. So if we just give that a little twist, sometimes when you're pulling this apart, this micro adjust here catches, so if you just turn a little bit, it'll slide right out. You can see it does have a bearing seal. It's actually not a seal, it's basically a cover so that the bearing seats up into the head pretty well. Don't put that back on the bearing. We're going to show you how to put that back in here in just a minute. Now we've got it apart. As you can see, there's nothing really in there that we need to worry about. If we wanted to change the switch, we'd do that at that point. We'll set that off to the side. The part that we want to deal with, take the 4 screws, set them aside. Don't forget your spring. It will go right back on there, and if you just set that on there, make it easy to remember where it comes from. Now, the part that we want to replace is this plunge shaft here. So I'm just going to take that little E-clip right off of there. You can see if you just do it in the down position, what it'll do is it'll come off. This one's a magnetic screwdriver, so it sticks to it. Most of the time it drops down in that little channel. You got to pull that out, and that allows me to get to my plunge shaft. Now, you've got an outer gear and an inner gear. Don't forget about the inside gear of the inner gear, if there is such terminology. We're going to set that off to the side, pull that rotator off. Now, there are 3 screws that hold that plunge shaft into place. 1, 2, 3. And when you lift this up, you can see that that plunge shaft just sits right on top of this. Now, the way that this is assembled, remember, your button has 3 little pieces and they're very skinny and they go in there. Your plastic spring goes into the wide slots that go all the way down. So we'll just set that right back into place. You put your large spring into place, put your pin part, which is basically what this is it basically acts just like a ballpoint pen. When you push it, it engages. When you release it, it runs free. Drop that spring over the top, and what I do is I like to push this down and turn it until it locks into place. Now make sure that it's flush all the way around. If it is, then we can take our ring, put that back into place. We'll just tighten a couple of those screws. And we've got our last screw here. And now we've got our plunge shaft into place. Now, next, we're going to set this up. Take our rotator, put that right back into place, and with the button pushed, it won't go in. If you push it again, it will engage so that you can release and turn that handle. But we're going to leave that pushed away. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that we put that little bearing cap back on there. And the reason that we put it in here and not on the end of this, when you go to push that in, it can kind of canter on the top of that bearing, and if it does, it will make your router spark and run really bad. So we'll just seat that right down in the head, and you'll see where it goes. It's pretty obvious, but I've got it nice and seated in there. We'll set that off to the side. Take this part, our outer gear, our inner gear, put our plunge shaft, just work that all the way in, and then push your button. What that does is it gives you that little piece pushed out far enough that we can take this E-clip, generally roll it so that it'll stay flat right against that gear. You can see it can't come out now. It's down in that groove. Clip that into place. Works just fine. Next, push that out so that we can feed that spring in, slide that together. Turn your micro adjust until it drops into place, then turn down. Make sure that this spins fine. That way you know that bearing has seated properly. Put our screws back in. Snug those up. We need to put our washer back on to our micro adjust. Take our E-clip, just pop that right back into place just like that. Then let's take our spring, take that cap, back it off until you know it's seated. Twist that all the way around till it's snug. Now we're ready to put it back on the base. Turn that around that way. And you can see it'll slide right back down in there. Push that button so that it will drop all the way down. We'll take our spring clip, put that right back in. If you have a spring, raise it all the way up and lock it. That way it's easier to put that spring and cap back on there. Put that screw back in. Now, the last thing we have to do is we've got to put our copper button back in there. Again, that protects from steel to steel so you don't mar your rod. Snug that right up. Now, if you just take your lever, snug it, then simply tighten that screw. Now you can see we raise up and down just like we're supposed to. Hope you learned something. Thanks for watching.